Hello, I'm Paul Arthur. This is Bridge City News. Here's a look at some of the top stories we've been following. U.S. President Donald Trump has ended all trade discussions with Canada over our digital services tax. Plus, Alberta's UCP government shares its year-end fiscal update. What do the numbers show? And the wedding of Amazon billionaire Jeff Bezos in Venice is not going over well with locals and activists.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News.
Thanks for joining us. Trade talks between Canada and the United States have come to a grinding halt as U.S. President Donald Trump today announced on social media that he is terminating all trade talks with Canada effective immediately. In the post, Trump takes offense to Canada imposing a digital services tax on American companies, calling it a direct and blatant attack. Ottawa's plans to push ahead with a tax on big tech companies like Amazon, Google, and Meta will hit them with a 3% levy on revenue from Canadian users. The tax will apply retroactively, leaving American companies with a $2 billion U.S. bill on June 30th. Trump says Canada will know in the next 7 days what tariff it will pay to do business with the United States. Prime Minister Mark Carney says he did not speak with Trump before the U.S. president pulled the plug on trade talks. Meanwhile, Washington and Beijing have signed a trade agreement. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the deal will make it easier for American firms to obtain magnets and rare earth minerals from China that are critical to manufacturing and microchip production. It comes after China retaliated against steep import tariffs imposed by the Trump administration on Chinese goods. China has also imposed tariffs on Canadian canola oil and meal, peas, and seafood in retaliation to Canadian levies on Chinese-made electric vehicles, steel, and aluminum. Prime Minister Mark Carney has previously said Ottawa is working to remove Chinese tariffs on these products. The Liberal government's major projects bill is now law after it made its way through the Senate at a brisk pace this week. Bill C-5 gives Ottawa the power to fast-track projects intended to boost the national economy by sidestepping environmental protections and other legislation.
The word nation carries a much greater meaning. These projects will build our national economy, and through Indigenous equity and resource management, these projects will be built with Indigenous nations and communities. This is not an aspiration. It is the plan embedded in the bill itself.
As you might expect, the Conservatives are skeptical about what C-5 will actually accomplish.
Mark Carney has decided to keep the oil and gas production cap in place. He's decided to keep the industrial carbon tax in place, which puts our steel and aluminum workers at a massive disadvantage when it comes to competing against their American competitors. He has kept in place the shipping ban, the ban on shipping Canadian oil and gas into new markets in Asia. So there is still a lot of skepticism in the Canadian energy sector about whether or not this bill will actually lead to results. And that is where Canadians should judge this government.
Indigenous groups have said they fear the bill's accelerated approvals for major projects will push aside their rights. They warn the legislation could lead to widespread protests and legal challenges if Ottawa doesn't respect their rights and title. Back to the U.S. president now. Donald Trump is calling it a big win. By a vote of 6-3, the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that individual judges lack the authority to grant nationwide injunctions. The outcome was a victory for Trump, who has complained about individual judges throwing up obstacles to his agenda.
But in recent months, we've seen a handful of radical left judges effectively try to overrule the rightful powers of the president to stop the American people from getting the policies that they voted for in record numbers. It was a grave threat to democracy, frankly, and instead of merely ruling on the immediate cases before them, these judges have attempted to dictate the law for the entire nation.
These lawless injunctions gave relief to everyone in the world instead of the parties before the court. As the Supreme Court held today, they turned district courts into the imperial judiciary.
The cases will now return to lower courts, where judges will have to decide how to tailor their orders to comply with the high court ruling. The ruling did not specifically address Trump's restrictions on birthright citizenship, leaving open the possibility that the proposed changes could remain blocked nationwide. Trump's order would deny citizenship to U.S.-born children of people who are in the country illegally. Also today, a victory for parental rights, as the Supreme Court ruled that parents in a Maryland school district are allowed to opt their children out of LGBTQ+ education, citing concerns over religious freedom.
It's really a ruling for parents. They lost control of the schools. They lost control of their child. And this is a tremendous victory for parents. And I'm not surprised by it, but I am surprised that it went this far. It took us to bring life back to normal. So it's wonderful. It's parental. And I kept saying, we will give you back your parental rights. They were taken away, and this is a tremendous victory for parents.
Montgomery County Schools in Maryland required that elementary school teachers read to their students books that celebrate gender transitions, pride parades, and same-sex playground romance. For a fourth consecutive year, Alberta's UCP government is ending its fiscal year with a surplus. Treasury Board President and Finance Minister Nate Horner says the surplus for 2024-25 is $8.3 billion.
Largely due to higher than expected revenue from energy resources, personal and corporate income taxes, and investment income. Resource revenue increased to $22 billion, primarily driven by higher bitumen royalties due to a lower exchange rate and a narrower light-heavy differential. Personal income tax revenue was a record $16.1 billion, or $516 million higher than budget, driven by strong growth in personal incomes and population. Corporate income tax revenue was $8.1 billion, up $1.1 billion from budget due to strong corporate profits in sectors such as oil and gas, construction, and finance. Alberta's low tax environment is working and should continue to attract investment and jobs, helping to secure Alberta's economy.
Alberta's population grew by about 200,000 people in 2024-25, making it the fastest growing province in the country. The province ended the year with a $5.1 billion in surplus cash, so based on its mandated fiscal framework, half of that, or $2.6 billion, will go towards improving the province's net financial position, either through debt repayment or savings in the Alberta Heritage Savings Trust Fund. Meanwhile, NDP finance critic Court Ellingson released a statement saying that despite a surplus, the UCP government has failed to attract meaningful capital investment or keep pace with Alberta's growing population and rising inflation. He says healthcare, education, and public safety are falling short of what Albertans need and deserve. The Ontario government is expanding public funding of private community surgical and diagnostic centres. Premier Doug Ford says the new clinics will help ease the burden on hospitals and reduce wait times.
That's why we're investing $280 million in community surgical and diagnostic centres across Ontario. These centres will help cut wait times and provide convenient publicly funded care for people in their communities so they can get care when they need it, paid for by their OHIP card, not their credit card. And as Mr. Schroeder was saying earlier, he wants to cover a vast area as far as Kingston, 25 hospitals, I think, as a backup hospital, because this is basically a hospital. What you built here is unbelievable. Today, as part of this funding, we are announcing a $155 million investment over 2 years to add 57 new community surgical and diagnostic centres across the province, licensed to deliver in-demand MRI and CT scans, as well as gastrointestinal and endoscopy services.
The province says the new centres will serve more than 800,000 patients. The Quebec government is questioning the relevance of prayer rooms in public colleges. It says in a new report that prayer rooms are fueling a climate of radicalization and mistrust in the province's junior colleges, saying they make it harder for students to get along. The report is the result of an investigation of the 2 English-language junior colleges in Montreal following complaints that the conflict in the Middle East had created an unsafe climate on campus. And speaking of the Middle East, Lebanese state media is reporting civilian casualties after an Israeli attack on a residential apartment building in Nabatea.
آثار العدوان الإسرائيلي المتكرر يوميا على شعب الجنوب وأرض الجنوب ورسالة إلى كل العالم للداخل والخارج نحن صامدون مهما قصفتونا وضربتم علينا بطائراتكم الحربية والمسيرات صامدون في أرضنا صمود الأرض في لبنان.
According to the Lebanese Health Ministry, at least 1 person was killed and more than a dozen others wounded in the attack. The Israeli military says it struck sites linked to the terrorist group Hezbollah. In local news, Lethbridge police are asking for your help to identify the suspect in a liquor store robbery. Thursday evening, just after 7 p.m., a man entered Ace Liquor along the 300 block of Blue Fox Boulevard North. The suspect brought some liquor to the front counter, then pulled out a knife and demanded cash and fled the store with the money. No one was injured. The suspect is described as a Caucasian male in his 40s or 50s, about 6 feet tall with a medium build. Anyone with information on this robbery can call police or Crime Stoppers. Lethbridge police have also charged a 35-year-old Lethbridge man in connection with a sexual assault and unlawfully entering a building. Police responded to a report on June 19th that a 50-year-old woman was sexually assaulted by her taxi driver after he took her home. The man allegedly called her numerous times after the incident and visited her home the same day, repeatedly knocking on the door. The woman called 911 out of fear for her safety. Sujipan Sathyan Anthan has been released from custody with conditions of no contact with the victim. Good news for residents and farmers along the Milk River in southern Alberta. The St. Mary Diversion Dam in Montana has restarted after more than a year since the siphons burst, preventing any substantial water flow from traveling through the Milk River. The siphons diverge water from the St. Mary River to the Milk River to provide irrigation water across Alberta and Montana. It burst open in June of last year, which tore through the hill and returned water back to the St. Mary River. Repairing the site cost $70 million, but was well ahead of schedule as water began flowing through the siphons by Wednesday.
We're super excited about being at this moment. You know, the work and collaboration between us, the Blackfeet tribe, the joint board, all the irrigators has been truly incredible. And to get to this point where we're running water and start to move water back down the Milk River is very exciting. And to be 3 months ahead of schedule, roughly, is even better. We're not able to transfer enough water to make a difference for this upcoming irrigation season, but it does allow us to get water in Fresno Reservoir, which is near Havre, and prep for next season to hopefully have a full irrigation next season. There's still a whole nother siphon to be replaced. So we replaced the St. Mary siphon, but the next project is Hall's Coulee siphon, and that'll be replaced starting while the canal's running. And then come August 15th, we're going to shut off the canal and start building the inlet for the Hall's Coulee siphon, because it's in the same age, same condition as the existing St. Mary siphon. And, you know, we saw what happened to that last year. We don't want to repeat in the upcoming years.
The work to complete Hall's Coulee will depend on the winter conditions and will finish anytime between the end of the year and early spring of 2026 in time for irrigation season. Residents in southern Alberta can expect to see the Milk River begin to fill up over the next couple of weeks and then dwindle again in mid-August. This year's Canada Day celebrations in Lethbridge will feature a little something for everyone. There are lots of events for locals and visitors to enjoy, many of them already taking place from today through Tuesday. Paul Kingsmith, Director of Event Development with the Lethbridge and District Exhibition, says this is the first time LDE has participated in Canada Day celebrations.
We will have the entertainment stage, the food trucks that will be lining exhibition ways. And then in addition to that, we have the Agri-Food Hub and Trade Center will be open to expand it out a bit. It gives more room for the festival to breathe and to grow, gives room for more food trucks, more entertainment options. We know that we are expecting a large number, a little bit more open and spacious than it is inside the Henderson Park area. Inside the building is where we will have an additional bouncy castle. We know that the bouncy castles are always popular on Canada Day, along with some kids activities. We have over 25 food trucks coming. We're having our very first ever Lethbridge night market. Will take place on Saturday night. We have our traditional Saturday on Saturday morning. At the Agri-Food Hub and Trade Center is the Western Canada Rib Fest, and then capping it all off is the Rotary Dragon Boat races.
Weather permitting, fireworks will cap off Canada Day celebrations Saturday at 11 p.m. at the west end of Henderson Lake. The city is also offering free extended transit service for that celebration. One of the pre-Canada Day events food lovers can take in at the LDE is the Western Canada Rib Fest. It has already opened its doors, offering delicious ribs, pulled pork, sausage, and more. Kelsey McInnes, Director of Entertainment with the Western Canada Rib Fest Tour, tells us more.
We're putting on a 5-day barbecue festival. We have some of Canada's top barbecue grill masters here. We have, of course, all of your barbecue favorites: ribs, brisket, sausages, pulled pork, all the hits, and live music, regional acts, local acts, some coming in from Calgary as well, a family zone, and we really strive hard to make it a very family-forward atmosphere. It is a rib competition where our grill masters take it very seriously, and they want to win that trophy, and they want to win the honor of becoming the top choice in Lethbridge. They want to take this banner home and bring it back next year and say that they are #1 in Lethbridge for top overall ribs or top sauce in Lethbridge.
The environment that we bring to these festivals, you know, the energy is always extremely high, and we make it fun for the people. It's not just about eating barbecue, it's about having a great time with your community. I hope everybody comes out and enjoys the barbecue and the music and just a great weekend and celebrate Canada.
It's always a little star on the calendar for us coming to Lethbridge. We love Lethbridge. Lethbridge loves Ribfest. Top Midwest barbecue. We hail from St. Louis, Missouri. We're Canadian owned now, but all our flavors, our recipes, our sauces have all stemmed from that Midwest history. We're here from Friday until Tuesday, from 11 a.m. till 10 p.m. So come on down, guys. We got lots of food for you and top-notch barbecue.
And with all the celebrations taking place, Alberta RCMP are reminding motorists about the dangers of impaired driving. Mounties say during the 2024 Canada Day long weekend, 7 people were fatally injured in road-related incidents. And a total of 101 impaired drivers were removed from the roads. RCMP remind drivers that impaired driving is criminal and also preventable. Always plan ahead for a safe ride home. Call a taxi or rideshare service or use a designated driver. This Canada Day is going to be a special one for Canadian actor Ryan Reynolds. He will be invested as an officer of the Order of Canada during Canada Day festivities at Le Breton Flats in Ottawa. Reynolds was born in Vancouver. He is known for playing the Marvel character Deadpool and his co-ownership of the UK's Wrexham Football Club. He'll be joined by several others, including Nova Scotia musician Heather Rankin, who's won 6 Junos with the Rankin family, in addition to her solo music career. The Order of Canada is the country's highest civilian honor. Hollywood A-listers have gathered in Venice for the wedding of Amazon founder Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez. But as we learn in this report, not everyone is excited about the billionaire's nuptials.
For Jeff Bezos and his fiancée Lauren Sanchez, there are no limits. But even for a couple that's been to space, a wedding in one of the world's most enchanting cities poses incredible challenges. Bezos and Sanchez's wedding in Venice has been one of the most anticipated nuptials so far this year, with an estimated cost of around $56 million. And in a city where even the ambulances are aquatic, that sum is triple what similar weddings would cost on land. Celebrities of all stripes have arrived in the Canal City, from Oprah to Tom Brady, Kim Kardashian to Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner, and many more. But despite the sunny weather and romantic facades, unrest has been bubbling underneath the surface of Venice, with regular protests from around a dozen Venetian organisations characterising the wedding as a decadent display of wealth amid rising global inequality, and an example of tourism taking precedence over ordinary Venetians' needs. Greenpeace unveiled a massive banner denouncing Bezos for paying insufficient taxes, and activists floated a Bezos-inspired mannequin down the canal. Despite these efforts, authorities have remained positive about the nuptials, saying the wedding brings free publicity and an economic boost to the city.
And instead of wedding gifts for the happy couple, guests have apparently been asked to make a charitable donation to the city of Venice. And coming up next, let's take a look at the forecast as we head into the holiday long weekend.
Our 7-day forecast has us with a high of 25 and sunny skies for today. Our weekend will also have sunny skies, with tomorrow having a high of 24 and Sunday a high of 26. Monday will be sunny as well with a high of 29. Tuesday will have partly cloudy skies with a high of 27. Wednesday will have a high of 30, and Thursday will have a high of 28, all those days sharing partly cloudy skies. Today's almanac has with an average high of 24 for the day, with an average low of 10. The record high on this day was set back in 1936 with 34, and the record low was set back in 1951 with -1. The sun rose at 5:26 a.m. today and set at 9:43 p.m. Our national forecast has Vancouver with a high of 20 and partly cloudy skies. Victoria has a high of 19 with partly cloudy skies. Edmonton and Calgary will have chances of thunder showers, with Edmonton getting a high of 21 and Calgary a high of 19. The rest of the prairies share thunder showers, with Saskatoon having a high of 22, Regina a high of 24, and Winnipeg a high of 28. Central Canada is also looking to get some showers and thunder showers, with Toronto getting a high of 27 and a chance of showers. Ottawa is looking to have a high of 26 and Montreal a high of 22. Atlantic Canada has Fredericton with a high of 19 and a chance of showers. Halifax has a high of 20 with a chance of showers. Charlottetown has a high of 23 with partly cloudy skies. And finishing off our national forecast with St. John's, we have a high of 19 and a chance of showers.
Canada's economy contracted in April as the manufacturing sector slowed in the face of U.S. tariffs. Statistics Canada says real GDP pulled back 0.1% that month. It points to goods-producing industries falling 0.6%, with manufacturing accounting for nearly all the decline. The agency's advance estimate for May points to another 0.1% decline. Cineplex CEO Ellis Jacob is slated to retire at the end of next year. Cineplex board chair Phyllis Yaffe says he will, however, continue to lead the company in the interim as the transition to new leadership gets underway. Jacob was appointed president and chief executive of Cineplex in 2003 when the Canadian assets of Lowe's Cineplex Entertainment and Galaxy Entertainment were merged. The movie theater company holds over 170 entertainment venues across Canada. Nike is feeling the pinch from U.S. tariffs. Its share price jumped as trading started today after the company announced a shift in some of its production away from Chinese facilities. The company also warned that tariffs imposed by the Trump administration will cost it about $1 billion before it makes internal changes. That means Nike will be introducing surgical price increases in the U.S. starting this fall. Walmart also warned of price hikes, saying last month its customers will start to see higher prices when the back-to-school shopping season goes into high gear. Now, here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was down 59 points to 26,692. The Dow was up 432 points to 43,819. The S&P 500 was up 32 points to 6,173, and the Nasdaq was also up 105 points to 20,273. West Texas Intermediate oil was down 15 cents to $65.09 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 22 cents to $3.74 US. Gold was down 64.70 to 32.6920 US an ounce, and silver was down 75 cents to 35.84 US. Feed wheat is at $8.32 per bushel, barley is at $6.57, canola is at $15.60, and corn is at $7.31 per bushel. Live cattle June contract was up $3.05 to $224.75. Feeder cattle August contract was up $4.52 to $307.90, and lean hogs July contract was up 92 cents to $113.25. And the Canadian dollar was down in the past 24 hours and currently sits at 73.10 cents US.
Recapping one of our top stories, U.S. President Donald Trump today announced on social media that he is terminating all trade talks with Canada, effective immediately. He is also now threatening new tariffs over Ottawa's plans to push ahead with a digital services tax on big tech companies that takes effect in a few days. Companies like Amazon, Google, and Meta will be hit with a 3% levy on revenue from Canadian users. The tax will apply retroactively, leaving American companies with a $2 billion U.S. bill on June 30th. Jeanette Rocher sat down with Alex Whalen of the Fraser Institute to chat about a study on Canadian air travel. Why are we paying higher ticket prices and getting poorer service compared to many other countries? Find out why with the full interview coming up next. When you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. You can also visit our website or YouTube channel anytime to check out more of our stories and interviews.
In today's global world, air travel is vital. Customers should expect a good service, though. Also safety, reliability, accountability. But let's face it, that's not the reality these days. Every day, flights are delayed, they're canceled, there's poor customer service, there's high prices, not to mention having to pay now for seats, bags, boarding passes. The list goes on and on. So joining us today is Alex Whalen. He is Director of Atlantic Canada Prosperity with the Fraser Institute and co-author of the study, Clearing the Runway: Reforms to Enhance Air Travel Competition in Canada. Good to have you with us today, Alex. Welcome.
Hi there, great to be with you.
Okay, so Alex, how bad is the situation with Canada's air travel industry? How do we compare when measured against, say, US or European air carriers and the rest of the world?
Well, according to the objective data we have, it's quite bad. If you ask Canadians, and our large national polling firms have done that, 2/3 of Canadians, when polled, say that they think that Canada's system of air travel is broken. The federal government, a few years ago in 2018, 2019, set up a complaints registry for air passenger complaints. Complaints have increased sixfold. And then when you look at price, one international comparison of prices placed Canada 101st out of 116 countries when it comes to price competitiveness. So Canadians are not happy with their options.
No, definitely. I fly a lot, and I would definitely be on that list of people that are kind of dissatisfied lately. Flying used to be so fun. It is just not fun anymore. So Alex, your study lists 4 separate fees that make it more expensive to fly from Canada, and one is airport improvement fees. So what does this fee encompass, and should passengers be footing the bill for this?
Airport improvement fees are applied on every ticket in Canada, and that is money that goes back to the airport authorities to fund their operations. the Canada exists broadly when it comes to fees on a user pay system. But what we've identified is that when it comes to airport improvement fees and a number of other fees, they tend to be much higher in Canada. For example, a typical airport in Canada may charge an airport improvement fee of about $30 per ticket. And what we've seen in comparative countries like the United States is that it's simply a fraction of that amount, down as low as $5 or $6 per ticket, for example.
$30 is high when you consider the amount of volume of passengers going through. I mean, my goodness, I know we're a smaller country than the US population-wise, but $30, that really, yeah, that adds up for sure. So second on your list is air traffic control fees. So what is all this about?
Yeah, so air traffic control fees must be paid to fund Canada's system of air traffic control. In Canada, we have a corporation called NAV Canada that handles air traffic control in the country. This is actually one segment of air policy where there's a bit of good news in the sense that air traffic control was privatized in Canada in the 1990s, and that system seems to work fairly well. The one area that we've pointed out when it comes to air traffic control is that some of the comparisons internationally show that Canada is a high-cost jurisdiction. So going back to what we were discussing earlier, when you look at all these different forms of fees, we see a situation where Canada is often uncompetitive.
Yeah, I mean, air traffic control, I mean, it's definitely important, but I mean, it's interesting when we start breaking down and realizing that we're paying fees for it. So a third is air travel security charges. What does that mean?
So air travel security charges are a form of charge that came in after 9/11. Understandably, there was much concern around security at that time. And to be super clear, obviously, security is something that everybody wants to see. But what we have noticed when we dug into these security charges is that actually the latest available data suggests that security charges are being collected in excess of what's required to actually fund the security operations and have actually resulted in a remittance to the federal government. So we've identified that as one area where fees are actually being collected in excess of what's required, and obviously that contributes to the cost of tickets.
Mm-hmm. And then fourth is airport landing fees. What on earth is that all about?
Landing fees are charged by airports based on a number of factors, including the weight of planes, and they go towards funding airport operations. Once again, it can be things like gate fees, parking fees, and so on. And again, when we look at international comparisons, it's just another area where fees in Canada seem to be higher than elsewhere in the world. And I do want to stress that it's important to understand the model of air travel policy in Canada, which is user fees. So it's not surprising that we see fees. I think the important part is to zoom in on where Canada's fees are uncompetitive and where they're higher than they need to be, because ultimately when we look at the overall cost of air travel, what we are seeing is that Canada is a very expensive place to travel.
Yeah, what are all these fees telling us? Like, what does this tell you when you're looking at, when you're kind of digging into all of this?
Well, when you zoom out and put it all together, I mean, I would point to a couple data points. First off, what we see is in Canada, taxes and fees represent upwards of 30% of the total cost of air travel. So that's one data point. And then, not surprisingly, when we look at a country like the United States, we see that air travel charges are generally about 30 to 35% lower. Now, there are all kinds of important differences between the two systems, and it's not as simple as that. But in general, the available data tells us that Canada is a high-cost jurisdiction and that consumers are paying for that.
But why? Why is it higher?
So we've gone through the different types of fees. There are a number of other policy decisions, mostly by the federal government, that increase the cost of air travel. One example would be Canada's model of airport ownership. The federal government of Canada transferred airport ownership to private not-for-profit operators in the 1990s, but the federal government still actually owns the land under Canada's airports and collects rents accordingly. So the federal government is effectively profiting off the system on a yearly basis. That would be another example of what is contributing to the high cost of air travel. And then in addition to fees and rents that I've discussed, it's important to note that there are other general taxes, not specific to the airline industry, that tend to be higher in Canada than some other countries when we look at things like sales taxes, fuel taxes, corporate taxes, and so on. It all contributes to the cost of.
So obviously you would like to see these fees and taxes lowered, as would we all, but what's stopping the government from doing this?
Well, that's a good question. I think what we are seeing in recent years is a shift. I think Canadians are broadly pretty unhappy with the state of air policy in Canada. And I think ultimately when Canadians demand change, the federal government will react. When we look at federal policy right now, obviously it's a time of great change in our country. I think we need wholesale policy reform in a whole number of different areas. And I think that Canadians would be quite pleased if the federal government implemented reforms in this area.
Now, the report says Canada has a particularly high regulatory burden for airlines, and you suggest this needs to be reduced. So what kinds of changes could be implemented, and would this potentially affect safety?
First, I think it's important to understand that every regulation that is added to any industry adds to the cost of that industry. So it's imperative for the government to remove unnecessary regulation. Everybody agrees that we need to travel safely when it comes to all modes of transportation. But we actually looked at a case study in our essay of the United States, which had a highly regulated air industry up until about the 1970s. And the United States undertook a really fascinating deregulation project. And what we see when we study the experience of deregulation in the United States is that airline competition improved, prices improved, choice for consumers improved. But the important part is that the safety record actually improved as well. So sensible regulatory reform does not need to mean that we sacrifice safety.
Yeah, deregulation, it meant more competition. It meant that it kept those airlines on their toes as well, for sure. Now, you had mentioned before the airport ownership is kind of an issue with the land that it sits on. So ownership structure. So apparently Canadian airports are government owned, which I guess most of us didn't really think about that. At least I didn't. Other countries often have private or for-profit airports. So how would this make a difference for us if we followed this type of model?
That's right. So, I mean, Canada's airports are operated by not-for-profits, but the federal government still owns the land and collects rent on the land. And so this is another form of restriction of competition. And really, that's the theme of our discussion today, is that Canada's skies need to be open to competition, whether that's more airports, whether that's different types of operators. There are a whole number of different federal policies that restrict competition. And at the end of the day, that creates monopoly power for existing providers and tends to raise prices. So certainly changing in the model to bring in private for-profit ownership of airports would be an important reform.
Yeah, and Canada has some strict limitations placed on foreign air carriers operating within Canada, which does contribute to a lack of competition and high ticket prices in our air travel industry, like you were saying there. So should these limits be lifted? And, you know, why would the government be concerned about allowing more competition?
Absolutely. In this study, we propose that Canada open up the skies to foreign competition. Obviously, we want that to be with trusted countries and within a proper security regime. But I'll point to the experience of Europe, which eliminated a set of rules known as cabotage. And cabotage basically restricts where airlines can fly. And that allows new entrants to come into the market. One study looking at the elimination or reduction of cabotage in Europe actually found that prices were reduced by 34% in the years that followed. That's the type of reform that I think we need in Canada.
Yeah, for sure. Why would the government be concerned about this, though?
Well, I think the government should be concerned because Canadians are concerned. I mean, going back to where we started, we've seen a six-fold increase in complaints to the federal government about the state of air travel in Canada. And just in general, I think it's important for our federal government to understand where they have a role to play and where they need to get out of the way, create a more competitive environment and allow the private sector to flourish. And I think that's true across many different industries right now, but perhaps nowhere is that more true than air travel.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we'd all love to see more customer choice and lower prices in our airlines for sure. So what will it take to convince our federal government to bring some of these changes about?
Well, selfishly, I hope our study sets off a bit of a conversation, but I think that conversation is already going on. And like I said, there will be a lot of change in the federal government over the next couple of years. So I think if consumer complaints keep piling up, we have a bit of a blueprint here in terms of how to improve Canada's air travel policy.
Yeah, for sure. Is there a reason why the federal government would be concerned about letting these other competitive airlines in, or, you know, why are they doing this, I guess is the question.
Yes, I think it's important first to understand that there are certain aspects of policy that we've discussed today where the federal government is actually profiting. So they have an incentive to maintain the status quo, but hopefully through some awareness, we can see the benefits of changing that policy. When it comes to bringing foreign carriers into Canada, I do think there's a security component there that needs to be evaluated. But countries all over the world have bilateral and multilateral agreements that allow foreign carriers to operate within their borders safely. As I say, that's done elsewhere, and there's no reason that couldn't be done safely in Canada.
Yeah, such an interesting study that you're diving into there. But thanks so much for sharing this information with us today, Alex. Appreciate having you on.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed the chat.
Absolutely. Alex Whalen is the co-author of the study, Clearing the Runway: Reforms to Enhance Air Travel Competition in Canada, which you can read online at thefraserinstitute.org. Well, I think we've all heard of the Big Brothers and Big Sisters organizations and what kind of an impact that they're having on the younger generation. So joining us to chat more about this is Jen Visser. She is the executive director of Lethbridge Big Brothers Big Sisters. Jen, welcome. Great to have you with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So how long has the organization been around here in Lethbridge? I think by now everyone knows what Big Brothers Big Sisters is, but maybe just talk about it and how long you guys have been around here in town.
Absolutely. So we've been in Lethbridge since 1973, and the building that we're in, we've been in since 1989, the little Victorian-style house on 6th Ave and 7th Street.
Yeah. And have there been a lot of changes over the years as to how things are done?
Yes and no. So we still offer programs that are the same from the 1973 start, but we've adapted other programs to serve different needs of children and our community.
Mm-hmm. In a nutshell, obviously, Big Brothers Big Sisters is about being a role model, right? Having a mentoring relationship with a big brother or a big sister, and then a child or a teen. So as you call them, bigs and littles, right? So what ages of kids are we talking about here?
So we accept children 6 to 16. We offer 5 different mentoring programs. So we have our community-based one that everybody knows about, where you take a child out in the community for 2 to 3 hours a week. Then we have a school-based program where a volunteer goes to a school for an hour a week. Then we have a teen mentoring program where high school students get to mentor kids. And then we have 2 programs called Game On and Go Girls, which is group mentoring, where we have, it's not a one-on-one relationship, it's a group of children matched to 2 to 3, sometimes 4 volunteers at a school setting.
That's interesting. Is there any one particular program that kind of sees more results, or does it really just depend on the kids? Some kids respond better one-on-one, or some better in a group with another peer there.
Yeah, we always look at it from a perspective that every child could use another supporting person in their life. And so, since the time I've been with the organization, which has been 15 years, I've seen our programs adapt and grow, and also the needs of kids change in that time. Seen lots of kids with, lots of low self-esteem or just challenges getting along with other kids. Whereas maybe historically we saw children that were coming mainly from a single parent home, which we still serve those kids, but we're really growing to serve any child in our community and surrounding areas who could benefit from having a big brother or big sister.
Yeah. So what children specifically qualify to become a little? How does that process work? How can a parent in rural, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. The number one thing is they want to be in the program. So that's our biggest thing is you want to be part of a Big Brother, Big Sister program. Different ways kids are identified could be through a parent seeing that maybe their child just doesn't have somebody in their corner, could be an absentee or a lack of relationships in their life. And also we could see interventions through social services and things like that. But the number one is a school identifying the need of that child, because that's where the number one of our kids come from is schools. And our vast of our programs are actually facilitated in schools.
Oh, interesting. So does the school have to get parental consent to
They
do all of this?
yeah.
Yes.
So we have lots of paperwork, lots of forms, because we want to ensure every relationship we are creating is happy, safe, and successful.
Okay, so I can kind of envision the school saying to the parent, listen, I think this child would really benefit from being a little brother or sister. That kind of is how the conversation goes?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
And then they sign, and then we start going into the school. And it, depending on the program, some are longer than others. We have sessions that are 7, and then we have ones that last the entire school year. And then we have some relationships that have been together for 10 years. It's every relationship is different. There isn't a specific way, because we're dealing with people and you can't just put people into boxes. It has to be based on need and relationship.
Yeah. So with that said, how do you go about matching up a big brother or a big sister with a child or teen?
It's all based about compatibility. So we do lots of screening, lots of interviewing, and lots of questions about things that the child is looking for in a mentor, that the parent is looking for. And then same with the volunteer, when they're accepted, that they're paired to a child that's going to be that they're going to have that positive relationship. We have trained staff who make those relationships. So they have a lot of training that they go through, and lots of formalities on our side that are kind of behind closed doors that people don't really see, to make sure that those relationships are a positive influence.
Mm-hmm. So how many visits per week are we talking about here, and how long would a visit last?
All of our programs are once a week that they would see each other. Okay. Some 7 times, some every single week, some an hour to 2.5 hours, depending on the program. When we get a volunteer to sign up with us, they have choice, because we want to make sure that volunteers in our community because everybody's time is very valuable, and we want to make sure that they're able to commit to that time. So we're very upfront saying, if you want to be in this program, it's 1 to 2 hours a week for a year. If you want to be in this program, it's an hour a week for the school year. And if you want to be in this program, it's 7 sessions for an hour to an hour and a half.
Okay. Can you give us a sample of what kinds of activities would take place on a visit?
Yeah, our community-based program, they can go bowling, they can go swimming, they could go anywhere out in the community to spend that time together. And even our office is open if they want to come spend time there during our hours. And then at the school program, it's not academic. So this is about self-regulation, about positive reinforcement. And so some of our programs actually come with a manual that you have 7 sessions, and each one has a content of what you're going to do that day. So could be bullying, could be breathing exercises, it could be about healthy living and active lifestyle.
All right. Okay. So like kind of little discussion topics there to sort of go over. Interesting. Okay. How many kids are currently participating in the programs? I know you were saying those numbers seem to be going up every year, don't they?
We see an increase, and since 2019, we served about 600 kids. And then we had a little bit of dip in 2020 because you couldn't have those face-to-face relationships. Right. And then we saw an increase. In 2024, we served 1,473 kids in active mentoring relationships.
And that was up from 600 something in 2019.
In 2019. From 2023 to 2024, we saw a 12% increase.
Oh my goodness. What does that tell you?
The need is high and the volunteers are low. It's what we're really seeing right now.
Yeah. Is there a wait list for more big brothers and sisters?
We carry 2 wait lists, one for our community-based mentoring program and for our in-school mentoring program. And there's anywhere from 40 to 70 kids waiting at a time.
And that's because, like you said, there aren't enough bigs, right?
Yeah.
We need
And
more
we've
volunteers.
always had a wait list too.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have any stories of how this has impacted a child?
Definitely. We've seen, I mean, especially with the time that I've been there, I've seen many kids walk through the door at 6 years old and be paired with a mentor, and now they're 17. And having that person in their life, we've seen kids successfully go through university. And, you know, you can see the average age of our kids is 10 that start to want to participate in our programs. And if you can foresee, because it's prevention, right? Not intervention. This is before something, you know, might have happened, that we can see if we can lead a child down a positive path, they're going to make right choices in life. And we actually have lots of studies that go into it, that for every dollar that's donated to Big Brothers Big Sisters, there's an $18 return on that in social investment in our community. So kids in our program grow up to give back to their communities, participate in community, and just go on to live a really positive, fulfilling life.
Wow, that's amazing. What kind of feedback do you get from the mentors? How are they impacted?
The mentors get just as much out of the relationship as the kids do.
Sure.
We're very upfront when they join, and that's why we take so much time in creating those relationships to make sure that they're going to last, that they're going to be successful. And we do lots of reviews. Like, you don't just get matched and we don't hear from you. You're connected to the organization for a continuation. And so our caseworkers are constantly working with those mentors. And then we have lots of different events in the community that they can do, hurricanes games, and we get tickets to different things, or we will put on, like, we'll do pumpkin carving or baking or something like that out of the building.
Yeah, I think it takes a special person to be a big.
Definitely.
It's a huge time commitment, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, we value our mentors so much, and we could not do what we do without them.
Oh, you also have a big couple mentoring program. What's that all about?
We do. So this program is really great. I wish we could get more couples to sign up for it, but you have to be in a relationship for at least a year, and you're matched with a child. And normally the kids in that program come from a background of maybe not seeing a healthy, stable relationship. And so being able to put a child in a relationship where they see a loving, caring couple is such a positive reinforcement to them. And I've seen the matches we make in that program always last a really long time, and they're really successful. And the little becomes part of their family.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. In the beginning there, you mentioned you also have a Go Girls mentoring program. So what does that focus on? Obviously girls. Tell us about it.
Yeah, we have a girls program and a boys program, and we do co-ed too. The girls program is all about self-regulation. So if we have kiddos who come to us and they just don't have the ability, if they have a bad day, how to cope with that. And the average age of kids in that program is about 12 years old. So being a 12-year-old girl is not an easy time in life. And they're paired to a female mentor, and that's in a group. So they're put with a group of their peers. They set up 7 times, and in those sessions they get question boxes. So at the end of every session they can ask any question that they want. And the objective of that program is, when they've gone through it, if they have a day that's not successful for themselves, they can write in a journal, breathing exercise. We've provided them with ability to find other people to talk to, a parent, a sibling, or a mentor, or somebody at their school, and that they can cope better with the challenges that they face in life.
Mm-hmm. And then on the flip side, of course, you have a boys program called Game On, right?
Yeah, Game On, they're both very similar. Game On, we talk a lot about healthy living and active lifestyle. Get off the couch and get your body moving is a big piece to that one.
Yeah, you must have some stats on how a relationship like this would affect a child's mental health or their grades or relationships, behavior. You must
We
see it all.
do.
Yeah.
Big Brothers Big Sisters has done a great job across Canada in doing a lot of research into our programs. We wouldn't be here for as long as we have if we didn't have that background to say, look at the positive influence we have on children and on our community. Because if we have happy, safe kids, they're going to make better choices and they're going to grow up and continuate that cycle that we need in our community to make it a good place to live.
So how does someone go about becoming a volunteer or a big brother, big sister? How would somebody do that?
If somebody's interested in becoming a volunteer with us, I would encourage them to go to our website, which is bbig.ca. All of the information about our programs is on there. You also could call the office at 403-328-9355, and you could speak to one of our amazing staff who could walk you through the process. The other thing is you can email us at info.leth@bigbrothersbigsisters.ca.
Sounds wonderful. Jen, thanks so much for being with us today and for sharing all this information with us and about the fundraiser too. So appreciate having you on today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Jen Visser is the Executive Director of Lethbridge Big Brothers Big Sisters. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.